What's going on? This is Action coming to you live from Dubai. We're here at the Genzio Media House, and I have the pleasure of talking with Al here from SSV Network. Al, great having you here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, tell me a little bit about what it is that you do over at SSV.
Sure. So SSV is a decentralized infrastructure staking for Ethereum. We started out life with DVT, Distributed Validators. It's kind of a research project by the Ethereum Foundation. We took it into mainnet, worked on it for a couple of years, and then launched it finally at the early of 2024. We grew quite significantly. Today, on SSV, you have 100,000 validators, which is roughly 10% of the Ethereum stake, 3.2 million ETH. A bunch of developers, anything from Sol Staker through liquid staking protocol, liquid restaking protocols, exchanges, institutions, and so on. And we just a couple of months ago announced kind of the next evolution of SSV, understanding that there's a superpower to those validators. One, they're part of the best validator set on earth. They're highly technical, highly capable of running software and high performance. And so we've announced SSV 2.0, which is focusing on based applications, where the idea is that everything which is not a contract, all of those types of services and applications ultimately need infrastructure to run on. And we believe that they should be running on Ethereum validators, in that way creating additional value to Ethereum back, but also utilizing one of the best validator sets on earth.
Oh, I got a fun question out of this one then. What would you describe you guys as? Like, are you a deep end?
So we are on a kind of the intersection of a few things. So obviously the staking and so on.
Yeah.
Definitely DeFi, because there is a part of that. Infrastructure is another part. But yeah, so it's in the on the intersection of a few things. But I think that most importantly, we're highly focused on value creation for ETH holders.
Okay.
And I think that's probably one of the main challenges, but also one of the main opportunities for Ethereum going forward, because there's a lot of opportunities here. There's a lot of things we can do, but also it's currently, I think, one of the biggest challenges Ethereum faces.
All right. So you've been able to attract quite a few validators. That's pretty good. How did you accomplish that?
We've been educating around DVT for quite a while, and also introduced incentives that brought people in. That's how we got even the idea that those validators look for those incentives in a way that is actually very surprising, because, in 12, 13 months, bringing so many validators, it's incredible. And they do that both because of the technology, of course, but then also the incentives play a major role. That's what gave us the idea of base applications, the idea that you could earn those extra incentives by running additional software. And so that's kind of how we did it. And now the idea is to create a marketplace out of it, where a bunch of developers get functionality and security from Ethereum validators and pay them extra rewards.
Got it. So essentially this marketplace is going to be exclusive to validators, saying
on SSV.
Right. Pick what it is that you want to run and have fun.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So what are some of those things that are going to be on your marketplace?
Oh, it can be anything. Oracles, bridges, data availability layers, AI agents, co-processors, ZK provers, basically any type of application which is not strictly in the EVM, Ethereum's EVM. And almost every decentralized app has at least one off-chain component, if you think about it, right? So all of those off-chain components, big, small, medium size, anything, you can even run a full-on L1 using Ethereum validators, can be built as a based app. And there's a lot of interesting properties coming out of that. Like, think of tapping into the security of Ethereum. If you have L2s tapping into the security of Ethereum through the EVM, here we're talking about tapping into the security of the Ethereum outside of the EVM, which basically enables a bunch of different other things. And so there's a lot of opportunity here to create a technology stack which enables anyone to run a distributed validators. The vision ultimately is, if you think about cloud compute, right? It's ultimately, if you want to run a single point of failure, a centralized service, cloud compute is for you. And that's basically Web 2. But there's no equivalent in Web 3. Basically, if you want to run a distributed type of application, there's no one-click, compute type of deal that you can run it. And we're trying to basically build that. And in Web 3, that's very interesting because the properties are completely different. How do you prevent Sybil attacks? How do you create and calculate voting weights for different validators depending on the assets they're holding, or if they're validators, so on and so forth. And so that's really kind of the idea here. And if we're successful in Ethereum, we'll expand to other blockchains as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I know other blockchains are trying to do exactly what you're doing, but they're not focusing on the marketplace. They're literally focusing on single applications, which makes it hard. But if you have this, endless amount of things that people can run, facilitating that definitely, has huge benefit.
My worldview is that ultimately crypto will have a few really strong L1s. Like the situation today where you have hundreds of them, obviously they have value because their token has value, but ultimately there's not a lot of activity if you go down the list, right?
Yeah.
And so, but there is a lot of value in creating a virtual machine in which a bunch of validators can come to a consensus on. And so the problem is not necessarily, the idea that you want a different VM. The problem is how do you attract security? Because by definition, the security and developer ecosystem they have is significantly lower than Ethereum and other competitors. But what if you can build the same thing on Ethereum, be secured by Ethereum, part of the ecosystem of Ethereum, and then you can have really interesting things. You can, as I said, you can actually build L1s using Ethereum validators, and that's a net positive both for the builders and validators.
Absolutely. All right, so let me throw a wrench in this whole thing because I've been seeing some stats that companies are actually, they don't want the cloud anymore. Like a lot of them are actually bringing things back on-prem. How does that affect your model?
So I think that this is super important, but depending on where in the technology stack, right? So I would definitely encourage, bigger staking providers to run their own on-prem infrastructure, because that's important in the sense that you create redundancy, censorship resistance, and just detach yourself from the cascading effects of everyone using AWS. But it's not for everyone. And so again, going back to the idea of based apps, that's fine to have the validators running on-prem and in dedicated infrastructure, because that's kind of the kernel that provides the security flower, right? But not everyone needs to do that. And so again, going back to the idea that there's going to be a few L1s which are really, really powerful, they should be investing heavily in decentralizing and distributing their validator set. And Ethereum invests a lot of money and resources and attention into that. But again, if I'm just building an Oracle, if I'm just building like a variation, taking the EVM, building an L1 out of it with some variations, if I'm building a co-processor, I can't have I don't have the attention span to start prepping for that, but I can use somebody else's infrastructure already did that. And so I definitely think there's a lot of space to that, and we're working with operators with on-prem infra, but I don't think it's for everyone. And the idea with, like anything with technology, right? You build it first, and then you enable others to use that in a much more scalable way.
I love that. I thought you were going to go the marketing route and go, great, let's bring it on-prem. Let's get more validators.
Oh, no, I don't think it's realistic. It's a lot of work. It's a lot. But again, you have those specialized services that already do that.
Right.
So why not build on top of that?
No, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like there are, applications and there are applications, right? People try to bundle everything all into one, and people are doing different things. People have different needs. So there's definitely like a very widespread difference really in what it is that people actually need to run basically on-prem or off-prem.
I would even extend the idea of on-prem. It's not just, people think of on-prem infrastructure like, a big server room with a lot of cooling, but it's not that. Like it can also be just a solo staker running a NUC computer in their own. That's an on-prem infrastructure, and Ethereum again puts a lot of efforts in those types of setups because of the importance of decentralization. So if you can tap into that, imagine the amount of time it's going to save you as a developer, and you get better infrastructure ultimately.
Very true.
So yeah.
I have never met a developer that wants to deal with hardware and actually like doing both sides of the equation. You know what I mean? So
but that's exactly what's happening. If I need to build an Oracle today, right? An Oracle is a very common use case. I need to get people to run my infrastructure. I need to convince them. I need to take care of explorers and matrix and just monitor it. Like all of those types of, it's a lot of work. I will probably put in 50-60% of the work into that rather than actually developing features. And so if you can re-tap into something that already somebody else built and invested the time in, that's going to save you time.
All right. So we talked about how you've, incentivized validators to come over. How are you getting these different applications incentivized to come over to your platform?
We're gonna actually announce something really big next month. If you guys want, we can talk about it then, because it's definitely a secret until then.
Okay.
But we have some big plans around that. So I strongly believe that we'll kind of try to duplicate what worked for us in the past. So the idea is to kind of the combination of economical incentives and technology. You need both, and then you can click and really bring people on board. And so I think that as the shared security space grows, I think that it's easier to get more developers. But it's a fight. Like ultimately, you need to convince them. You need to move them away from what they're doing now and move them to what you're building. But I mean, we're executing really, really well. We just announced Based Apps. Again, at the end of January, we're already in public testnet with full features and hopefully on mainnet in 2 or 3 months. So dev cycle is definitely very rapid here.
No, it's very cool. Are there any other examples that you can give us as far as like people that have utilized your platform to build cool things?
Oh yeah, so we have anything from oracles, bridges, call processors, storages, pre-confirmations, and base sequencing is very big right now, and they're definitely onboarding to us. So there's a lot of different use cases coming up, and obviously we want to have a really, really long tail of those developers, and some of them will be successful, some not. But I think ultimately that's the idea when building infrastructure. You need longevity and you need just to be consistent with what you're doing. I mean, before we've launched SSV, we've been working almost 2 years on the technology. And so, during those times, we did a lot of education and hit, right? So people kind of, when we actually launched, people knew what we're doing. So the same thing goes here.
I love it. Now, you're here at Token 2049. Why did you come out?
So it's a bunch of different. One, I've spoke in like a bunch of different places, and also really kind of it's one of the first times I'm coming to Dubai in this context, right? So it was the combination of a few conferences, high quality, definitely a lot of interest from institutions to what we're doing, developers coming in. So it's mostly FaceTime. Getting people and just plain old BD work. So it's
How's it been so far?
pretty good,
Yeah.
pretty good.
Like when it comes to connections, are people like, what's the feel out there? Are people just looking for money? Are people looking for products that actually work? How has your experience?
I think people looking for opportunities and looking to also kind of get inspired. So in my kind of let's say personal Twitter account, I'm very kind of pro Ethereum war machine, like kind of trying to symbolize that it's not all doom and
Gloom,
we have a lot of challenges, but we also have a lot of opportunities, and I think that people are looking for that. And that's actually what I spoke about at the staking summit. The idea that Ethereum as an asset definitely has challenges, right? The past 2 years, and it's lagging behind. But Ethereum, the blockchain, is not. And we just need a way to connect the two. And I think it goes through value capturing through ETH. There's a lot of activity on Ethereum. Ethereum has some huge assets. Obviously, validators are part of that, but the developer ecosystem is huge. And just the amount of people using it and anything from RWAs all the way to whatever, NFTs. And so we need to find a way to capture more of that value back. And I think people are looking into, kind of something that orders the chaos, right? Something that kind of creates a path forward to a place where Ethereum the token catches up with Ethereum, the blockchain. And so in that sense, I'm kind of very passionate about talking with people about it, and I think it's something people are looking for.
No, that's fantastic. So how do you get people excited when they know that the price of the token is basically half of what it used to be?
Yeah.
Validators, most of them probably don't even care because they're in it. They have that conviction in what they're building. But getting people to actually like provide new services and come on, it becomes a little bit more difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that ultimately people are looking for a story that both kind of creates this line between the past, present, and future, right? So I think that there is a simple question that we as a community really need to tackle, which is why would the average Joe, which is much less technical than it used to be, because now obviously with TradFi we're opening up to everyone,
right?
And we want that. The average Joe doesn't understand things like decentralization and TPS and so on. There's a limit to kind of the way you can translate those very technical terminology into TradFi or kind of the Wall Street. And so I think we as a community need to answer a very simple question. Why would the average Joe today hold ETH? Now, the usual answer would be because of gas, right? But that's not really the case because one, most people don't really consume or spend gas that much. And two, it's because historically it's just not true. Because if you go back to why people held Ethereum in the past, well, in the ICO age, it was because Ethereum was kind of the way you bought into ICOs, right? I had to have ETH, then I could use my ETH into buying ICOs. And so that was a really good reason to hold ETH. Then you had DeFi, right? So the DeFi summer 2022 and staking came along same time. You had a really good reason to hold ETH because you can provide liquidity. Most of the counterparty transactions or trades were against ETH, and so you had to have ETH in the middle. But now I think we don't have a good answer to that question, and that's part of the problem. But what I'm saying is that we potentially do have a good answer. We just need to prioritize it, which is, I think Ethereum should be positioned as kind of the Internet of Values or the Web3 or the worlds, whatever you want to kind of frame it in, security and settlement layer, basically. Gotcha. And so if you look at it that way, it means that the more Ethereum grows, the more value should be kind of pushed down to the ETH holders. And that's part of what we're doing, part of what other people are doing. But I think that once you tell the story, people understand, okay, there's something to do about it, and we're not hopeless, just looking at the prices and getting sad every day. There's something we can do about that. And I think that that something is simply the fact that we need to prioritize the simple question, why would the average Joe hold ETH? Right. And work towards that. And I think that there's a lot of good reasons to hold ETH. And there's a lot of activity.
Tell them, what's the reason to hold ETH?
So the main reason to hold ETH is that there's a serious conversation happening now in a lot of different places about the fact that there's so much activity happening on ETH, but not enough of it going down as fees or value back to Ethereum. And I think that conversation is like a snowball. It starts to pick up and become bigger and bigger. And we can then actually make the moves, increasing gas prices in certain ways that help us. For example, increasing gas prices on blobs, on blob data for L2s, or investing heavily in based applications, pre-confirmations, base sequencing. Again, all of those types of things are basically another way for validators to earn rewards, and validators are essentially ETH holders, promoting institutions to do staking, ETFs, and so on and so forth. All of that is definitely possible and doable within the next 6 to 12 months. And that's going to create a huge value capturing back to ETH holders. And so if you tell the story right and you say it's not hopeless and it's not, we're not just floating in a small boat in the middle of the ocean with no engine, like we could get there. And so that's part of my passion and why we're building, why we came to Dubai. I've talked about it on stage. I think that's a narrative that we need to promote. And again, it's not to say that we don't, Solana is not good. It's just saying that Ethereum is better.
We're going to have to clip that. Yeah. All right. So if people want to get more of those hot takes, where can they find you online?
I mean, I'm blobbing all day on Twitter. So just follow me on Twitter. And
what's your handle?
Just Alon Muroch, Muroch. Yeah.
Fantastic, guys. This is like, if you weren't bullish about Ethereum, well, you better be after you hear this guy talking, because this has been incredible. Hearing that not only are validators, bringing value just, with a regular, the securing the blockchain, but having additional opportunities for them is huge.
Yeah.
This changes the game for a lot of people and creates some really incredible opportunities for people out there to get excited again about Ethereum and what it can do. So appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Really happy to have this conversation. Hopefully we can follow up in a month and see how you're doing something.
I sure hope so.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Hey, what's up?
But it's not something Genzio is afraid of.
If you want to survive, you got to build a
How
hive.
do you know we do not understand that we do not want? Ladies and gentlemen.
We're back at the Genzio Media House.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.